I love that last note. Thank you. Omaha, Omaha, Omaha. Welcome to Super Bowl Sunday. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, here's a football player who made Omaha one of the best recognized cities in the United States. But if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just watch a little bit of the Super Bowl tonight and you'll truly understand. So how many think Denver's going to win the Super Bowl? Wait. Yeah. Debbie in the back, yes. Seattle Seahawks. Woohoo, yeah, well. I spent a large part of my time in Seattle, so I think I'll probably have to root for Seattle tonight, as long as the Chiefs aren't in it. Excuse me a second. Pardon me. Yeah? Yeah, they're all here. Yeah. On, O-N, okay, on. Are you sure? On. Okay, volume? Full? You're sure about this? This has never happened in this church before. I don't think it's ever happened in any church before, so you're sure? Okay. If you have a cell phone, would you take it out, please, and just hold it up? Okay. Would you turn it on? Yeah, we've been instructed to turn our cell phones on. And would you turn the volume up as high as it'll go so the ring will come through as loud as it possibly can? Okay, good. Leave it that way. And if you hear ringing, I'll explain more in a little bit. So, just keep your cell phone on. Keep it at full. Okay. Everybody have them on? Okay, we're going to need them. Last week, if you remember last week, we talked a little bit about rolling up your shirt sleeves and getting to work. So last week, my daughter and her husband were on vacation. They were down in the Dominican Republic. So my wife and I were house sitting, and dog sitting, and grandson sitting. And so last Sunday, we invited Dorian, my grandson, to come to church, and he didn't want to go to youth and family. He wanted to sit right here in front. And we weren't really sure how that would go over for a almost 7-year-old, so we gave him a big pad of paper, and he just sat there the whole time and drew and didn't pay attention to anything. So last Sunday was an extremely busy day. When you live out of 2 households like we had to do for the week, you get up at one, you have to run over the other, get dressed at the other, and then I had to come here and be at church early and then do the 2 talks and then the potluck afterwards. So afterwards, went home and went over to Dorian's house, and I was a little tired. And I said to Dorian, Dorian, I think it's time that Grandpa had a nap. And Dorian looked at me and he said, no. He said, it's time for you to roll up your sleeves and get to work. I said, what about you? He said, no, I don't need to do that. I have short sleeves. Kids. The last 2 talks I've given have sort of set the stage for this talk today. That really wasn't planned, but 2 talks ago I talked a little bit about how life will sometimes take you in directions that you're not planning to go. You really didn't plan on doing this, you didn't plan on going in this other direction, and just to be really open and receptive to whatever direction, whatever path God sends you on. And then, of course, last week it was roll up your sleeves and get to work, because if you're moving along this path, then there's things for you to do along this path. And the idea that lots of the challenges that we have in our lives are really God's call to move us deeper than we have ever been before. So we talked quite a bit about that, how the challenges in our life. Maybe you're working with abundance, an abundance challenge, or a healing challenge, or a guidance or a relationship challenge, how that was God calling you a little bit deeper than you've ever been before. So I was talking to Reverend Jan about this during the week, and as we were talking about moving deeper than we've ever been before, what are the next steps? She said, okay, how? How do we do this? What is our next step? We've got this, the plan is not exactly as we had figured it out it was going. We're going in a different direction than we had thought. We're being called to move deeper than we've ever been before. So what is our next step? And of course, she knew the answer to that. And I thought about it quite a bit. And what came to me is cell phones. It's all about cell phones. The next step is cell phones. So did you happen to notice the cover of your bulletin when you came in today? Yeah, notice that cover of that bulletin, that God had called and you missed the call. Well, I was thinking about this, and I don't want anybody to miss God's call. So that your cell phones are on, they are on full. When you hear somebody's cell phone ringing during the service today, we're just going to stop the service. And we're going to say, is God calling? Okay, you got that? We're going to try it out. We're going to listen until we hear somebody. Is God calling? Yeah, let's try that again. Is God calling? Okay, yeah. Any cell phone ringing, if you're comfortable doing so, that person can stand up and hold their cell phone up so we can say, is God calling? We don't want to miss that call. So we're going to play with this a little bit today and see what happens. My wife does give me a bad time about my cell phone. She does say to me, I've got some of your numbers in here just at random. My wife says to me that I keep my cell phone off all the time, so I'm never going to know who's calling me. And she's absolutely right. This is one of the first times that I've kept my cell phone on for anything. So I never ever know who's going to be calling me, what they're going to be calling me about. So she does give me. Yay. Yeah. Is this fun or what? How many church services have you been to where they've said, please keep your cell? Is God calling? to please keep your cell phones turned on. Okay. So how do we get to work? How do we take this next step? What do we do? How do we go deeper than we have ever been before? We turn on our cell phones and we ask God. Is God calling? We ask God to speak to us. We absolutely ask God to speak to us. Is God calling? We got another one back there. Gosh. During the first service, I kept hearing ringing and I kept looking out. There was my phone. I think sometimes God calls us and we just don't listen. We don't hear the call. There's a story told about a man, and his life didn't go as he had planned. He thought it was going to go in this direction, and he moved off in this direction. It did not happen there. And he moved off in this other direction, and it didn't happen there. Things just really, really got bad for him. And he thought he was listening to God every time he took a step. He thought he was listening to God's call, but something just wasn't right with him. And he had a very difficult time, and everything was going against him. It got to the point where he was threatened for his very life. And one day he decided just to give up. So he decided to quit life. So he just laid down, fell asleep, and he heard a voice. And the voice said to him, get something to eat and get some water and move on. So he got up, he got something to eat, and he moved on. And he moved on, and Nothing changed. So he decided he's just going to quit life. So he laid down, went to sleep, and he heard a voice. And the voice said to him, "Get up, get something to eat, and move on." Did I hear it? I did. Anyway, he got up, he got something to eat, and he moved on, and he just wandered. You know, in the Bible, they talk about 40. The number 40 is very significant in the Bible. You hear about 40 years wandering in the wilderness. You hear about 40 days and 40 nights. And 40 means whatever period of time it takes to accomplish something. So this man wandered for 40 days and 40 nights. And he was finally led to a very sacred and holy place. And he stood in that very sacred and holy place, and he looked out. And, you know, my interpretation of what happened to him next was he started to reflect on his life. He started to look at all the turbulence in his life. He was just standing there, and he just felt these winds blowing, all this turbulence in his whole life. It felt like a hurricane or a tornado had just come through and just wrecked his entire life. And he said, "God, I went through that challenge and you were not in that challenge." And he stood there. And he felt like the very foundation on which he was standing was falling apart. It felt like an earthquake to him. And he said, "God, you know, when I was going through these experiences, I did not experience you." And so he stood there. And then it was like a great fire just came and consumed everything that had happened in his life. And he said, "God, you were not there in the fire. You were not there with me." I'm getting a little message. I was supposed to have ended my conversation with Fred. I'm sorry, Fred. The man was a prophet named Elijah. And I want to read to you what happened. And God spoke to Elijah, and God said, "Go forth and stand upon the Mount Horeb, where Moses received the 10 Commandments. Stand upon the mount before the Lord, and behold, the Lord passed by. And a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. The voice of God. It's my belief that God was actually there when he was going through his time of tribulation. That God was actually there when the winds were blowing. That God was there when the earthquake was going on. That God was there when the fire was... Oh, it's God calling. Yay, Kathy. That God was actually there in all those experiences, but he couldn't stop and hear the still small voice. This is from the King James Version of the Bible. The New Revised Standard Version has a statement that I like even better. It says, "And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence." A sound of sheer silence. It's only when you move into the sheer silence that you can truly hear the voice of God. When you ask God to speak to you, you've got to take the time to move into the silence and just listen. Listen like you have never listened before. You see, I think God calls us all the time. I just don't think our cell phones are turned on. And I really wonder what would happen if Elijah had had a cell phone and had been able to turn it on. And don't you wonder who I'm going to call next? Be ready. Okay. Balcony. Is God calling? I had lunch with a congregant this past week, and this congregant really touched me. He was reminding me of an author that I have not read in a very long time, the author being Joel Goldsmith. And I remember my favorite book of Joel Goldsmith's. It was The Thunder of Silence. thunder of silence, because that's when God really speaks to you, in the silence. So I looked up that book, I pulled it out of my bookcase, and I came across just a couple things I want to share with you. Because Joel Goldsmith says, it's in the silence that a miracle takes place. Are you ready for a miracle in your life? Are you truly ready for a miracle in your life? Are you ready for something new in your life? Yeah, same 5. Yay. It's in the silence that the miracle takes place. Joel Goldsmith goes on to say, as we meet with problems of every nature, conflicts, enemies, hatred, persecution, injustice, we rest in God's word, and God works the miracle. Rumblings of the thunder of the deep silence of God's peace reverberate and increase in power until eventually they break every barrier. The mighty noise of the silence grows in volume until its thunder rends asunder the illusion, and God stands revealed in all God's majesty, glory, and peace. It only takes a few moments of silence. I knew Rosemary Fillmore Ray really well. She's granddaughter of our co-founders, Charles and Fillmore, and I was looking through her book recently. And she was talking about how she lived at Unity Village for a long period of time, and it's there that she first heard the voice of God. And the voice of God said to her, there's no reason to search for me when I am part of you. I am closer than your heartbeat, nearer than your breathing. I am in every experience, in every person. I am those you love most, and in those who have caused you pain and despair. I am always here, guiding you, loving you. But to feel my presence, to hear my truth, you must quiet your busy thoughts, still your anxious mind, and let my peace unfold you, my love embrace you. It is in the silence that you hear me. It is when the mind is still that the soul listens. And then she closes this section with the words from the Psalms. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. So I'm going to ask you to take your cell phones right now and just to turn them off. When I was ending the 9 o'clock service, I got a text from my wife. It was a text to my daughter, and it said, Dad wanted me to tell you when you text me, you don't have to text him also. So I thought that was rather appropriate to end the service with. But you know, I was thinking about our lives, and I was thinking about that man, and I was thinking about your life. And if you are like that man standing there, and you have all the winds, the turbulence just flowing through your life right now, if the earthquake is just shaking at your life at its very foundation, I'm going to ask that you come up with a prayer statement. And what we want is a positive statement. If you're going through a financial crisis, we don't want a prayer of, God, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. We want a prayer of, God is the source of my good. God is the source of my good. A healing challenge in your life. God is the life flowing through me right now, healing every atom and every cell of my being. If you're looking for guidance, God is the light, the guidance that you are seeking. Love, God is love. And I embrace and express that love. So think of anything that you might be going through right now, or what a friend of yours might be going through right now. What we're going to do is we're going to take that prayer, we're going to use that prayer, and we're actually going to go into the silence, a 2-minute silence. We can do it, 2 minutes in the silence, and then just see if the voice of God speaks to us. But I have another assignment for you. When you think of that prayer, remember it when you leave the sanctuary today. And I invite you to go to that counter over there or the counter down in front of the Peace Chapel. Write that prayer out. Let our prayer chaplains be praying with you for the fulfillment of that prayer. It's in the silence that miracles happen, and our prayer team will be supporting you in that silence. So just hold your prayer thought for a moment. Just close your eyes for a moment and hold to that thought. Whatever your thought might be, and I'll just affirm some. God is the source of my good. God's perfect life moves through every atom and every cell of my being. God's light guides and directs me. We had a woman at the 9 o'clock service whose mother was just getting ready to make her transition. And so for her, we knew the eternality of God's life, that the soul continues on to the next experience, whatever that experience is. These are the prayers that we hold to. So we release these to God, and we say, God, speak to us. Speak to us. In the silence is the miracle. And we move into the silence. In the silence. And we take a deep cleansing breath. And we give thanks to God for answered prayers, for the miracles to be found in the silence. And so it is. Amen. You know, it says in Scripture that where two or more are gathered, that the Christ is right there in the midst. Imagine hundreds of people gathered, just holding in the silence right now, holding that silent prayer, and see the miracles that are going to be manifesting in your lives. Well, I would like to share with you, in closing today, and I took the bookmark out of the book, but I wrote it down. I've been attracted to some of Stephanie Barton's books the last few weeks. Angel Insights I shared with you. Her new one, A Pocket Full of Angels for a Heart Filled with Love. And we'll be talking a little bit more in a few minutes about how you can pick up one of her books if you want. But I opened it up and I found this statement. I want to close with these words. When you are ready, spirit is willing, and love is able to immerse you in joy, shower you with abundance, activate your soul's mission, heal your wounded heart, mend your broken parts, renew your faith, uplift you, sustain you, give you a fresh start. When you are ready, spirit is willing, and love is able. This is your moment. Are you ready? Are you ready? And then she has in big capital letters the word yes. So I say to you, this is the moment. This is your moment. Are you ready for the miracles to manifest in your life? Yes. Then, folks, answer your phone. God bless you all.